Hello and welcome to Shaman Sister Sessions episode 42. I'm Michelle Hawk. I'm here with my shaman sister, Catherine Bird. And together we created this offering for you to tune into our conversations about what it means to be a practitioner in the world, do work of a spiritual practice, and sometimes just what it means to be human living on this earth plane. We are so excited to welcome special guest Andrew Marshall here today. Andrew Marshall is a dear friend of mine and collaborative partner. We've been creating some beautiful offerings together. And Andrew is joining us for a discussion on Embody the Practice today. Andrew is the creative visionary and facilitator behind Embody the Practice. You can find more about his work at embodydthepractice.com. He is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, a sound healer, and yoga practitioner. Using these modalities of embodiment and diving deep into sound and expression, authentic expression of self, he creates a safe and sacred space for people to explore self-development and personal growth. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
it's been a while coming. I think we talked about this several months ago, back in July. Yeah. And Kat, how are you doing today?
Amazing. I'm a little tired. I had 2 big intensive days over the last 2 days and then stayed up too late and just been like doing a lot of work. So, but I'm really happy to be here with both of you, and thanks for coming, and excited to talk about this topic, and surprised that we haven't talked about this topic yet. So this is perfect.
Absolutely. We've alluded a lot to embodiment work over the course of our almost a year now. I can't believe it. 42 episodes. This is so exciting. But Kat and I both have a really strong embodiment practice. So we've touched upon it quite a lot. And it astonished both of us that we hadn't done an episode. So how perfect it is for you to join us here today. Thank you. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and your embodiment practice?
So thank you for the awesome introduction, Michelle. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, sound healing, and yoga are my main practices and focuses. I teach Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in Portland, Oregon. I've taught in Seattle, trained and taught in Seattle, and in Hilo, Hawaii. And sound healing has been a passion of mine, a practice that I've done for the past 6 or 7 years. Again, in Seattle, Portland, and Hawaii. And then yoga is just a passion of mine, brings me home to myself, gives me a true spiritual center and direction. And with these practices, my focus has always been it's great to get good at these practices, but really what's the ultimate goal of the practices, why people have been doing martial arts for thousands of years, why people have been practicing, having, variety of spiritual practices for thousands of years. It's because of the benefits and the wisdom that they bring into our everyday lives that helps us live a better life, a more balanced life, a more centered life, a more loving life, and the knowledge of how to live in the world and how to be in right relationship. And that's what they've taught me, coming from a place of not understanding what it meant to live a healthy life, what it meant to be in right relationship with myself, the people around me, my environment. These practices that I eventually brought into my life and eventually came into my life have taught me these things.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah,
I think we're done. Enough said. No, but absolutely, you touched upon a lot of important topics there that we will circle back around to. But let's talk about embodiment itself for a minute. Kat, I know this is a specialty of yours. What do we mean when we talk about embodiment?
Well, it really is about being in connection with your body, about having a real, profound, daily, consistent experience of your body, of the physical form. And it's something that challenges a lot of people. And as we go through our awakenings and we become more sometimes spiritual and kind of float out of our bodies and start traveling in the astral, or we're we're sort of trained out of our bodies in a lot of ways. Our school systems train us out of our body. They're like, your brain is what's important. Don't listen to your body. Don't pay attention. We're not going to play. We're not going to have fun. We're not going to move our bodies. We're going to think. So we get really trained out of our bodies. And then now as adults, I think that a lot of us are trying to re-embody and learn how to be human again, and how to be kind of animals in a certain way. I think that a lot of embodiment is just tapping into our earth energy and our animal frequency.
Absolutely. With the development of our fantastic brains, these human brains that allow us to do the work that we do in the world and read and communicate in a certain way, it's come at the cost in a lot of societies, especially in the Western world, modern Western world, of that disconnection from what it means to actually live in a physical sphere. Right. And so then we have these ancient practices, like we were talking about with jujitsu and yoga in particular, been around for thousands and thousands of years, these threads of traditional wisdom that really focused on the union of bringing that energy, that mental energy and that high vibration psychic energy into the physical form.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
A balance of physical health, movement, being outside, but also really growing the intuition, the mental faculties, the emotional health, bringing that all into balance. And that's what everyone, like you touched on, Kat, we're really trying to find a balance when there's been so much emphasis on developing the mental. Now we need to find a balance of, being a balance of activity, a balance of embodied movement, a balance of practices so that we can use these developed mental faculties, technology, with being really healthy and really active and knowing and really feeling good in our bodies. People want to feel good in their bodies. That's why people, through spiritual practices, they retreat to spiritual realms or more spiritual, etheric concepts. And in school, retreating to the mind, retreating to overthinking things, all these different ways to retreat out of the body because people don't feel good in their body, right?
Yeah, that's huge. And as we live in a world where, with continuing mineral depletion in the food that we're eating, where we're prescribed all sorts of crappy medications and pharmaceuticals, and without even thinking, we're putting all these toxic things in our body. And even just by virtue of the air that we breathe and the water that we're drinking, we are causing deep harm. So it's not even so much about, it's not always a thing that we can help being unhealthy. And there is that tendency to, oh, I don't feel good here. Of course I don't want to spend time. You don't want to spend time in a place where you don't feel good. So there are many ways that we practice escapism. Yeah. And I think Kat and I know you've had experience with helping bring people back into the body where they're just all up here, super floaty, super airy fairy. I have too. And so I'm kind of curious to hear your thoughts about that.
Well, I think it's important to also, we're having this conversation around, how disembodied that we are. And there's sort of this kind of the spiritual, there's the mental, and then, there's a lot of emotional and trauma realities that have happened where people they're trained how to dissociate from their bodies from having traumatic childhoods and traumatic experiences. I've heard it said that every single one of us is suffering from PTSD just from living in our society, and that we sort of train ourselves, like you said, it's not comfortable here. It doesn't feel good. I'm just going to pull everything out of this physical form. I'm not going to live inside the body. And we do that on a consistent, regular basis. And there's so many things that cause us to do that. Like you said, this, the food that we're eating is just like, we're depleted, we're tired, we're suffering from obesity, we're suffering from lack of movement and lack of self-love, self-worth, and then add in, a couple heavy doses of trauma and you're basically not in your body at all most of the time. And the process of becoming re-embodied for a lot of people can become even like a lifetime work of trying to educate themselves back inside the physical form. And I've seen that with so many people, and there's all of these different ways that we do this, that we leave our bodies and we don't value them. They're not beautiful enough, so we actually don't want to spend time there.
Mm-hmm. We've touched upon a few of the whys already, but I want to delve in a little bit deeper. What are some of the most important reasons why we want to cultivate an embodiment practice? And then we'll circle around to that, what that means too. Like an embodiment practice, what does that even mean? But why do we care? Yeah.
Well, what I've found is through these practices, which for me were martial arts, yoga, qigong was a practice of mine for a long time, various forms of meditation, various forms of indigenous healing practices. Through my own persistence and desire to feel good in my body, to get answers of who I am, why I'm struggling the way I'm struggling, healing the things I want to heal. It's through these practices that I can sit here now and say, I feel great in my body. I feel healthy. My digestion is awesome. My mind feels clear. I feel strong. I feel like I can breathe easily. I feel, excited to get up every day and move, and it's these practices that have given me that ability. Whereas when I was 20 years old, I already felt like I was 60 because of the way I grew up and just eating up my body. I ate fast food every single day. A lot of days were Taco Bell for lunch and Wendy's for dinner, and then ice cream for dessert and staring at the TV.
Yeah.
Or playing video games where I'm killing people in the video game, and like that's my entertainment. So like all these things that I was feeding my mind and my body, and then beating it up in football and getting in fights and just being in a toxic environment. And then I'm 20 years old and I feel I have all this back pain, I have all this emotional pain, my body doesn't feel good. And so it was turning to substances that was my escape from feeling like crap in my body, right? So we're doing the how, is that it?
We're doing the why.
The why. The why, yeah. So the why is that once I found practices that really motivated me, I found jujitsu, I found some meditation practices, some books that I loved, and then I started hearing, I'm in martial arts, and I start thinking about, I've seen martial artists meditating and on TV and people talk about that. I should look into this. So it was once I tasted a little bit of what these practices provided for me, the health, mentally and physically and spiritually, then I found the persistence to just keep going. Whatever struggles I came up against, that's what I found, is that persistence to keep finding what worked right for me and keep doing these practices eventually led me to being able to feel healthy mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
Yeah.
Amazing. We could probably consider you in the 1%, like we go, okay, the 1% of the rich people. No, like the 1% of the people who actually feel good inside their bodies and their digestion is working well and they like how they feel.
And the people who figure it out, because there are plenty of people living that lifestyle that you described, or some variation of it, where we don't live in our bodies. And so I spent a lot of time not living in my body as well. And even though I was growing up, I was into sports and I did practice various sports, it is possible. I want to differentiate here where you can still do things in your body and be like living your day or playing sports or doing things or activities and not actually live in your body. That's a really important distinction. So,
Totally.
and that's something that I experienced, where even though I would say as a kid, the thing that felt the most connecting to me was horseback riding. I did horseback riding for about 6 years when I think I started around age 6-ish and then went up to about 12. And for me, that was my first taste of a real embodiment practice, because as I've spoken about at great length, I'm a real animal person. So it wasn't just me in my body, it was me connecting with a horse And animals are so good at being embodied. We could talk about that for a very long time. And we did a little bit with the animal guides episode we did a few weeks ago, in case you missed it. But for me, that was kind of a first taste. And then I hit, kind of my teenage years, where it is, again, natural when our bodies are going through so many changes to say, oh my gosh, this is really uncomfortable. I don't know what's going on. I feel so weird, like I'm breaking out or whatever the deal is. And again, snap back out of the body. So even though I was playing basketball and I played tennis and I played volleyball all throughout high school, and I was active, I wasn't actually living in my body then either. So it wasn't until I think probably I would put maybe my early to mid 20s on it when I start, and I already had a strong spiritual practice by this time, but when I started bringing the two together, that's when I really hit my embodiment stride, and I actually started living in my physical sphere in a way that I had never done before, even though I have been active my entire life.
Yeah. For me, I grew up, I was super active. My brother was much older than me and was an athlete. So he was always like pushing me to do athletic things. And I think that as a child, I was always moving and running, and, swimming was a very meditative practice for me, because it was sort of just this repetitive thing that you do for a really long time, and you're focused on the breath. So it becomes a meditation. The total trance swimming. And when I was 18, I started focusing on stunt work and stage combat and sword fighting, and really using my body in that way, which was amazing. But I consistently overdid things and hurt myself. I sustained some really intense injuries. And through the horrible pain that I was in my body was one of the ways that I sort of like disengaged from my body, because I was in so much pain that being in my body was pretty horrible. And I still deal with a lot of pain, actually, on a daily basis. And so in my practice, there's a lot of like, okay, moving through the pain and touching the pain and being present with it, and doing things that actually support my body in a way so that it is as pain-free as possible. And really, I kind of moved away from a lot of, I used to work out a ton, and I moved away from a lot of that because of the pain that was in my body. Until I had my spiritual awakening, and I became so blown out energetically, so unable to handle the energy that was moving through me, that I had to start focusing on physical practice and doing standing practice, doing dance, movement, meditation practices, holding energy, doing qigong, yoga, like really focusing on healing my spine and my body. This became my like everything, because it was the only thing that actually gave me access to being able to handle the shamanic, spiritual, energetic activations that I was going through, to be able to go out in public and handle myself, was to actually go through the physical body.
Absolutely. I want to talk about that for sure, because I know especially a lot of our viewers and listeners tune in to talk about the energetic practice and ways of channeling that, really. So Andrew, what have you found? I know you do a lot of work with the sound healing as well, and holding the healing container, the energy work. How have you found the union of those in your practice?
Well, what I want to respond to what you said, Kat, about your awakening. After your awakening, realizing, how you really felt in your body, and needing to do all these practices so that, everyone will have kind of a different experience in what an awakening is for them. But awakening is, it's an awakening to our truth, but it's also an illumination of the direction we need to go, and what we need to work on, and what we need to heal. Right. So when we have that awakening, people can have, in a sound healing, they can go into a very deep meditative state, and they can develop more self-awareness about what's going on for them and what they need to heal. And that's a form an awakening, maybe a smaller form of an awakening that shows you where all the discomfort emotionally and physically is within you. And then it steers you in the right direction to start clearing those things. So I don't know if I answered your question directly, but that's in the spiritual practices. As we have awakening, as we develop self-awareness, it's not always just the development of more bliss. It's the development of showing us what's getting in the way of us experiencing more bliss, happiness, joy, health, what we really want to experience.
Well, and then the way that we really work through that is through cultivating our awareness. What's that? Oh, our awareness and sensitivity, which we do through the body. So I know, and Kat, you were starting to allude to this, and Andrew, I absolutely know that this is something that comes through in your practice too. You create more space, and this is something I always tell my students, I tell my clients, imagine you're trying to build a pyramid. And if the base of your pyramid is this big, your pyramid can be this tall. If the base of your pyramid is this big, your pyramid can be about this tall, and so on and so on. In this case, your pyramid is you and your energetic spiritual practice, and the base of your pyramid is your body. So the more solid you are in your body and your physical practice, and the stronger your container, not in terms of like, oh, I can lift 300 pounds, not that type of strength, but the awareness and fully living in every single cell of your body, having that very fine-tuned sensitivity and the capacity to ground in that strongly, that's what will allow you to build a pyramid 1,000 feet high.
And the pyramid is the capability to conduct energy, right?
Yeah.
How much energy you can move through your body is directly correlative to how much space, how much room, how open your container is, and how strong it is, how much it can handle, because we can put a lot of energy through our system, but it can burn you out or it can sustain you and feed you. One of the whys I want to very much touch on, because this has been coming up a lot lately, and we talk a lot about being a healer, being a channel, these different spiritual gifts that people are awakening to, and sort of the beings that are out there that are maybe not of the highest and best, and different energies that are in our clients or in society that we come across, or that are just kind of floating through. And how do we remain safe and protected in these experiences that we're having? And the thing that keeps coming up and coming through is that embodiment is one of the primary protective forces that we have for our systems. That if we're fully embodied, if we're connected to our body fully, then we're not inviting things in. There's no room for things to come in and attack us. There's no room for things to come in and want to embed themselves inside of us. There's just no room for it because we are fully in there. And so this is a question that people always ask. Well, how do I know if I'm safe? How do I know if I'm okay? How do I know if things are going to jump in me? How do I know if I'm going to take on other people's energy? And yes, the cleansing and the purification, all these practices that we teach are very important, but just being in the body is primary focus of protection and safety for these kind of works.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love what you're saying there, Kat, because that's something that I've just been in the last couple of years been coming into a greater awareness of going through those stages of like fearing what's outside, fearing entities, fearing energies, other people's stuff. And it's like when you're in that state of fearing those things, you're not embodied, you're not centered. But when you're like solid, you're embodied, you're centered, you're fearless. And that lack of fear does not attract those things, right? So
Absolutely.
I know that feeling. I can speak to that feeling of being solid in a space, in the body, and it's like you're not even thinking about that stuff. That's actually kind of an alternate universe of thought that you have the choice to go into or not. And when you're not living in it and you're just solid and centered in yourself, those things don't really exist to you.
It doesn't even cross your mind,
Yeah.
and you're not inviting it in. That's the ultimate act of sovereignty, is to be completely present in every particle of your being. Okay, I gotta meme that. I have to remember that. The ultimate act of sovereignty is to be completely present in every fiber of your being. Cool.
Beautiful.
Very quotable. You can quote me.
Okay, good. Well, I know that you can probably also relate when we look at, when you look at a master martial artist or a fighter, someone who is, you know, coming up against a foe, and it's like they can't get in. They can't get into the system. They can't get inside and hit someone, right? And it's because that person is so embodied. Every cell is working together. Everything is in full presence. And then the minute if you lose presence, you're done. You're out. You're out of the game. The other guy got you, right?
Yeah. Well, and again, you're speaking like directly to, we're on the same page here, Kat. Literally just last weekend, I competed on a pretty large stage on this show called Submission Underground. So there's hundreds of people there in the crowd, and there's thousands of people watching live stream around the world. And I got my butt kicked, right? Because and it was my mindset. I beat myself with my own not fully centered mindset. And the guy that I went against was kind of what you said, his mindset and his physical being, everything was really solid, working together, just focused right there. And as soon as I made one mistake, I lost, right? And so, that's the piece where the martial arts can form such a solid foundation in your personhood, in your being, in your mind, and in your body. Teaches you how to have that fully centered state of being where it's fearless, but not because you're trying to not be afraid. It's just you're not trying to not be afraid, and you're not afraid. It's just boom, you're there. And then on a practical level, you know, we're talking about protection and solidity in embodiment, so that we're not, you know, we don't have an issue energetically or with other spiritual entities. But on a practical note, just in regards to relations with other humans, when you're holding that solidity within yourself, then you're not attracting conflicts with other individuals as well. You're not attracting violent energy. You're not, whether it's physically violent or emotionally or mentally violent energy, you're just not attracting that in your life, and it's not part of your sphere. Now we live in a world where that exists, so you're never 100% clear of it, but you sure can be in a way in the world that's solving problems before they're a problem, and it's happening a lot less in your life, and you're in harmony with other human beings and your environment.
I think that's really important, because when we look at people who are victims and they've been like victimized multiple times, that they can be just like, they're picked out of the crowd by you know, people who are looking for somebody to victimize. They can pretty much walk into a room and know who that they can victimize. And I think that, you know, you have that first maybe childhood experience or experiences that pulls you out of your body, and you're not present inside of your body, and then it just keeps happening, and it becomes this pattern of life that keeps happening of, you know, that person's not aware, they're not inside their body, they're not present, they're not able to have that fearlessness, and so then keeps inviting this, you know, predators into their field. And then, you know, maybe that person goes and is like, okay, I'm going to go do self-defense. And then that kind of turns into an embodied experience. And without ever having to take advantage of those skills that they've learned, they actually have shifted something within them that no longer, you know, invites that energy into their field.
Totally. You're finding that balance over time of, I'm here, I'm not afraid, but I'm also not interested in causing any harm. You know, that's the goal. That's that peaceful and strong state.
Yeah, not from a defensive standpoint, but from a proactive one, about I'm unfuckwithable, you know.
Yeah. But not antagonistic.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very empowering. It's so empowering to actually live fully in the container that you have, I mean, this is a fucking miracle, right? And so to be fully present in our earth suits, in our bodies, I want to speak just briefly to part of the working with entities and kind of the fear around especially channeling work. In case you missed it, Kat and I did an episode, was it last week or 2 weeks ago?
Last week, I think.
2 weeks. Yeah, because we did guidance and mentorship last week. Again, also a good one. But 2 weeks ago, we talked about channeling and some of what it means to work with bringing in non-physical entities to occupy some part of your body so that you can bring it forward and share messages and do this work. And we talked extensively about the protection aspect of it and the kinds of beings, again, Kat, you mentioned this a little bit, the kinds of beings that you work with when you're channeling, it's going to be a heck of a lot more comfortable to be channeling archangels or channeling the big heavy hitters of the celestial realms if you are fully in your body. And if you're not fully in your body, there's plenty of room for all sorts of beings that you don't necessarily want to interact with to come in. Being in your body, again, is very, very empowering, partially because Earth is a free will planet. So when it comes to working with these energies and entities, again, the ultimate act of sovereignty is being completely present and grounded in every fiber of your being. Then you get to say, no, there's no room for you in my body. There's no room for anything external in my body. There's no room for, even the people that we love. We keep our energy separate and safe. There's no room for your stuff in my body because I live here. And it is that easy. It is that simple. And yet simultaneously, it's one of the hardest things to retrain ourselves to live that way.
Yeah. I think it's really important also for us to mention in this, like, why would you want to do this? Is that our body is our source of our primal intuition, that, that gut instinct, that yes and no that comes from the body. So that when we're out making decisions on a daily basis, we're coming from a place where we're listening to, if we are fully embodied and we're utilizing embodied practices. So every day we get up and we do something with our body. We do some qigong, some yoga, some stretching and some breathing and some things. Then we are setting the stage for the rest of the day to be inside of our body, so that when we have the question of what we're going to eat, or, if we're going to go on a date with this particular person, or if we're going to make this business decision, then the body is like, fuck yes or fuck no. And then life becomes super easy all of a sudden. And we stop getting in our mind like, oh my gosh, what should I do? I'm so worried about this thing. And what decision should I make? I don't know if this is the right thing to do. And is this the right thing to do? And maybe I should call somebody. I should get some advice. I need to pay somebody to tell me what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's ungrounded, not embodied.
It's not embodied, it's ungrounded. So I think that's an important reason that we should be interested in this.
Yeah, it's like you said, that's what, especially when you do those practices first thing in the day and you set your mind right, you set your body to feeling good and activated from those practices, then naturally you embody the practice. Mm-hmm. Naturally you embody those benefits from the practice early in the morning. They go with you through the day. You set your mind in a certain way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're also creating muscle memory, physical and energetic, emotional, mental muscle memory, where when you spend time in a state of embodiment, even if it's only, and this is something I tell my clients, if you have only enough time to do 2 minutes of practice a day, do your 2 minutes of practice a day, because that's going to be a thing that you're creating the habit, so you can get there that much easier and stay there.
Big time.
So if you only have 2 minutes to stand there and shake in your body, do it. Worth it.
Also, I think it's worth mentioning that not everything that you do with your body is actually being embodied. And we can see this with a lot of sort of fitness kind of fad sort of experiences, when you see people and they are pushing their body and they're not listening. They're not resting when the body needs rest. They're not, like, there's a lot of injuries. There's, doing things that are imbalanced. So maybe having like big muscles here and little muscles here, and the body is not actually really functioning. And maybe I have muscles, but I can't actually lift my arm all the way up. And, there's a lot of people who are out there doing physical activity and fitness, but aren't actually embodied because they're not listening to the body. They're not utilizing the body in a natural, balanced manner. Mm-hmm. And so this can be just as damaging, because your body is like, okay, well, you're not listening to me. I'm not talking to you anymore.
Mm.
Right.
Or I'm going to talk to you when it's really bad and you're going to not like it at all.
Yeah, it has to yell to get our attention.
Right? Get hit with a universal hammer.
Mm-hmm.
I've had that happen plenty of times. I'm curious, what are some of the challenges and let's start with you, what are some of the challenges that you see when you're teaching your jiu-jitsu students? And we're talking a lot about what it means to be embodied. I'm kind of curious, what do you notice in your students?
When we have the newer students, we have a belt system in jiu-jitsu. So we have white belts. You start out, you're a white belt. And there's all kinds of kind of observations and sometimes playful jokes people will make about being a white belt. And a white belt, typically, most of the time, a white belt comes in and their movement is very clunky and they're trying to force things a lot. Like they haven't learned much technique. They're doing things that are new to their body. So their breathing gets tense and their body gets tense and they try to force things a lot. Right. So that's one of the challenges with people who are newer to the path. And I think it's true. That's generally true in a yoga practice. That's generally true if someone's trying to learn how to dance. Right. There are all these practices where when we start out and we're trying to do something new, we hold our breath, we constrict, we get tight, and we try to force things. So that's the challenge, is helping people understand how to get beyond that tension and that force, trying to force things to happen. So, and what we tell people is, like, when a white belt's, they've been working a move for a while and they're going, I'm going against this guy, a blue belt's the next level up, or a purple belt's even higher. So they say, I'm going against this blue belt or this purple belt, and I keep trying this move and I feel like I'm doing it right and it's just not working. Well, it's mat time. It's persistence and consistency in the practice. So I can't, if you're new and you're having a hard time, you're struggling, your breath is tense, you're trying to force everything, I could tell you what you need to do, but I can't just tell it to you and then you switch it like overnight. I can tell you what it is, but then you have to put in the time. You have to have the patience and the persistence
and the practice
to grow and change. So that's what it's helping people understand, that everything we're talking about here is a gradual process that is never ending until the day that we pass on. And we can arrive at different phases in the journey that all have similar challenges, but we're never getting to one point of like finalizing, okay, we finally made ourselves perfect and now we've arrived at this goal. No, it's continuous, gradual process that requires our persistency, our strength, our courage to keep growing and keep learning.
Yeah. And perhaps some patience
Big
with
time.
ourselves. Yeah.
Big time.
Giving ourselves permission to go slowly.
Yeah.
Does anyone here have challenge with that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Kat, not you? What?
I'm like gonna be perfect at everything the first time I do it.
Yeah, right. We're a whole bunch of perfectionists right here. And if I'm not good at it, I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. But it is a big practice, the allowing practice itself. Yeah.
I have to be the master the minute that I start something.
Yep.
Well, yeah, so we're all perfect examples of this too. That's the struggle. The question is, what's the struggle that you come up against with students? It's like just telling them, you just need to put in the time.
Yeah.
That's the answer. Put in the time. Trust the teachings. give it time, trust the teachings, just say it over and over again to people, and then they're like, oh, fine, you know, and they keep coming in.
Right.
And eventually 2-3 years later, then they're like feeling good, they got it, you know.
Yeah, I think all three of us are really good examples of that, you know, as we're all masters in something here, and yet all of us still have that tendency. And I know it's, I'm experiencing some of that myself, you know. So speaking of what do our embodied practices look like, I had some shifting and backsliding actually really recently over the last couple of months in my embodiment practice because I hurt myself. And I've spoken a couple times about my shoulder injury and about the various energetic implications behind my shoulder injury. But what it really did was it threw me out of my practice. I had a really solid practice going for months. Actually, most of this year, I found what worked for me, and I would do my morning practice that involved journaling, and then I would run to put it in my body. So I would be doing the energy work and the processing and perhaps some affirmations or whatever I wanted to bring in, journaling, and then I would run. And with every step, breathe it into my body, breathe it into every cell. And for most of this year, that was my practice. It was perfect for me. It was really beautiful. And then when I hurt my shoulder, I couldn't run because my range of motion in my shoulder was really restricted, and any of, you know, kind of this back and forth movement would actually tear this ligament even further. So when that piece of my practice became unavailable to me, my entire practice shut down. Because, and granted, there were other things going on in my life at the time, so I just moved, right? This is my new house, my fabulous new house, but my physical moving location, I was doing some traveling, and my practice, I left it. And I've been really feeling it the last couple of months because the amount of energy that I've been able to channel through me for my system is that much less. It is significantly noticeable that I haven't had that same kind of practice. So I've had to work around and create new practices. And actually just in the last couple of weeks or so, I started formulating a new practice that really works for me, that is not hurting my shoulder any worse. Still kind of like I'm rehabbing it, I'm doing some work, but my embodiment practice now looks very different. So it's no longer, I'm not running as much anymore, but I am still moving energy through my body. I'm taking time outside. I'm spending time in my physical form. And even just in the last couple of days, I feel so much better for really doing that and recommitting myself.
Nice.
Yeah.
So it takes creativity too. Creativity and within that persistence, right? Sometimes you got to shift things up for a while. If the one thing you really love to do that's working for you, all of a sudden you get a roadblock, well, don't just stop and give up. Like Michelle did, you redirect.
Thanks.
You redirect temporarily.
Like Michelle did. You can't just say, don't just stop like Michelle did.
Oh, also, sorry. I worded that wrong.
Right. Yeah. Just find a creative workaround.
Don't just stop. Like Michelle did, you can redirect.
I see. Okay. Yeah, I deserve some credit here. Getting creative with this. So,
that's what I meant.
Yeah, exactly. And so now I've got a beautiful new practice that involves a short run. I can do short little runs without straining my shoulder, to some forest near my house. And then I stand in the trees and I work with the trees and I touch the trees and I live in my body, and I do all sorts of things in the forest. And thank goodness nobody's come across me yet, because I'm sure they'd raise some eyebrows, but that's okay. And get to hang out with coyotes and owls and then come back. It's good.
Awesome. So I think that one of the things that I see is just that people don't do it, right? There's a lot of resistance. People are just like, you give them a practice to do. They're like, I want to work on this thing. I want to do this thing. I want to heal this thing. I want to become this thing, whatever it is. And then you go, okay, well, if this is what you want, do this practice. And then they go away and they come back and you go, how is the practice? And they go, oh, didn't do the practice.
Right.
And you're like, okay, well, it's a 15-minute practice. It's a 5-minute practice, 2-minute practice. So what do you really want? And I think that some of this is, what I've found is that people who have been, devoted to a sport or have played an instrument, generally have a better internal understanding of practice and being okay with like, I'm going to spend an hour doing this thing that I'm really not good at, and it's okay. And I'm going to do it every day anyway. And maybe not feeling the benefits yet, because a lot of times when you start to do a practice, you might not feel anything. You might not get, I remember when I started working with my teacher and we were doing these practices, and I would be like, I don't get it. Like, I don't get what she's saying. I don't know why she's talking about seeing colors. I don't see any colors. I'm not getting what she's saying. I'm not feeling this. I'm not feeling this energy move through my body in this way. I'm not seeing the things that she's saying that I might be seeing. I'm totally not seeing any of those things. You know, it's uncomfortable. I'm having pain. This hurts all the time. Is this ever going to stop hurting? This is horrible. I hate it. This sucks. And it actually took me being okay with that being my experience and being like, I actually hate this right now. And this is super uncomfortable and I don't get it. And, you know, all of the things that go through our mind, we're like, I am not spiritual. I'm not this, I'm not that. And still having the internal, like, I'm going to just fuck it. I'm going to do it anyway. I'm just going to show up and I'm going to do it. And maybe I won't see any colors, and maybe I'll just, a color came into my mind. Like, I don't see the color, but I think that blue is a nice color. So I'm going to just think about blue right now. And, you know, like just letting ourselves be where we're at, and that it's not going to feel amazing right off the bat. It's not going to feel natural. It's not going to maybe even feel good. And being okay with the fact, because like you learn an instrument and you see people that have got calluses and they're bleeding and, you know, you suffer a little bit. And then eventually you get the calluses and you're like, oh my gosh, I can play this instrument and it's really easy and it doesn't really seem like a big deal.
Yeah.
And also, if you do have one of those kind of initial tastes of success, you know, sometimes you try a thing and your first time trying it, just like, oh, wow, okay, yeah, that's great. And then it seems to go away. You know, there's that sort of, I think they talk about this in The Alchemist, right? How the universe wants you to succeed. So it'll give you a little dose of beginner's good fortune.
Yeah.
Don't let that, if it goes away, that doesn't mean it stopped working. It just means, again, like the potential is there. If it happened once, it can happen again. So keep at it. And again, practice the patience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And like what you said, Kat, about people that had done a sport or a musical instrument from an earlier age have kind of developed these certain internal muscles to understanding practices and how to stick with it, and and you have that imprinted in your mind that it's like, oh yeah, like no matter what's going on, I'm going to take an hour out of my day, 30 minutes out of my day, 10 minutes out of my day to do this thing. And it is more challenging when you didn't develop those muscles, those habits from an earlier age. Now, anyone can do it, but I have acknowledged that with people and worked with people where they didn't develop those habits at a young age, whereas I did, and I didn't understand that initially, and I was kind of harder on people than I probably should have been. So I'm like, what do you mean? Why? You said you were going to do that for an hour and now you're not doing it. I do not understand why you're not doing it. But then it was like learning, you know, everyone has a different experience. Those people that weren't doing that, they have incredible strengths that I don't have. So just remembering like, these are my strengths and those are their strengths. And I'm here to help guide them, you know, to develop these strengths in these areas where I have strength, right? So everyone can do it with that persistence, right? But it is challenging when you didn't develop those habits early on.
Humbling too.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, Michelle, what you got? What's next?
Well, I was gonna see what can we offer to people as some suggestions for building their own awareness of their embodiment and practice.
Oh wait, can I give you one more why of why people don't do their practice?
Yeah.
Because they don't want to feel the emotions that are in their bodies.
Yep.
And this is a huge one, and will trip people up because they're like, well, it doesn't make any sense. Like, I say I want this thing, I want to do this thing, and but the problem is that our emotions get trapped into different areas of our body, and then we kind of disengage from our body. We stop doing things with our body. Maybe we put on some weight to kind of make a little covering around that emotion. And then when we start to re-engage with our body, a lot of times we'll have emotions that come to the surface, and we start to feel, sadness or grief or anger or fear, and all the things. The trauma comes to the surface. We have memories from our past. And that can often sideline people because they're not expecting that or used to that happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is why it's so important to find the teachers and the guides that you really trust and like.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're the ones that are going to help you. That's why you can do things alone. You can get a little video series and do that at home or whatever, but it's so much more beneficial and powerful when you have an in-person teacher for whatever it is that you're doing, that's going to hold a compassionate, loving, wisdom guided, space for you. That's also a no bullshit. A real good teacher knows how to have that, be
Mm-hmm.
compassionate, loving, and also be no bullshit, where they're like, you're coming up against these emotional pockets, things in your bodies that really doesn't feel good. It's really hard to face. They'll compassionately let you get through that. But then if you wallow in that and dwell on it too long, they're going to be like, no, bullshit, keep going,
Mm-hmm.
and have that good balance of guiding you. So that's where that's
Yeah.
a helpful way for people to get going, is take the time to find the teachers that you align with and that you really trust.
Mm-hmm. And also give you the tools to work through it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So calling you on it and saying, okay, well, is part of the reason that you're not doing this practice because this emotional thing is coming up for you, rather than avoiding it or rather than forcing it.
Right.
Again, we're not into forcing here, but how can we work through it in a healthy, constructive way to illuminate it, witness it fully, let it be expressed so that it can actually move out of your body.
Yeah.
I hear that that's hard for you. I hear that that's a struggle for you. I'm here to help take you through that. That's what a good teacher says.
Mm-hmm.
Trust me, just keep at it.
Mm-hmm.
You will do it as long as you need to do it. Just keep at it. I'm here to do it with you. You're going to move through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got another why. Don't do their practice. Well, okay, so I should clarify for our viewers and people who are tuning in, we're telling you all these things as, a possible little self-identification. Oh, is this why I'm avoiding this? Is this why? And so then giving tools to look at how to work through that. People avoid their practices because they're afraid of what will happen if they actually do it well and they succeed.
Yeah.
Self-sabotage, huge, right? And I'm kind of wondering if you see any of this with your students. Like, are people actually afraid of what will happen if they become as powerful as they are? I see this in my clients every now and then.
Yeah, it's actually, there are two categories with promotions in jiu-jitsu,
Mm-hmm.
where some
and is
people
that up leveling from one belt to another? Okay.
Yeah, so if you're up leveling from one belt to another,
Mm-hmm.
there are a type of people that they really feel like they deserve the next promotion. It's kind of their part of their ego is like, I deserve the next promotion. When am I going to get promoted? This is BS that I'm not promoted. And they want it. They want the glory of the higher belt. And then there's other people who are pushing it away, like, nuh-uh, I want to stay at this belt for years. Like, I don't want the responsibility and that comes with that higher degree of promotion and the eyes on them. So there's definitely people will hold themselves back or maybe not perform as well as they could have because they actually don't want to be promoted,
either consciously or subconsciously.
Right.
I'm sure sometimes they don't know that they're doing this, and this is a conversation I have with some of my students, some of my clients, whenever this comes up, of like, no, really, let's actually look at, you say you want this thing, and yet your actions are indicating, no, you really don't.
Yeah.
You're actively taking steps to ensure that you do not reach that level of container. Again, that holding the practice in I've really only seen this in a few of my clients, and it's usually around some particular life change that people are saying they want. And this is where I think a lot of people come up against that resistance to change, because there's the fear of what's on the other side. What's on the other side if I actually make this change in my business? What's on the other side if I actually leave this job? What's on the other side if I actually start saying that, oh yeah, I'm a psychic, right? All these layers. Or what's on the other side if I actually start being a healer or doing this work in the world? Oh no, that's really terrifying. That's really scary. Okay, so no, I can't do that. I'm not good enough. I need more practice. I don't want to publish my website yet. I don't want to, whatever the deal is. So they shut it down and keep themselves small. And I've had periods of my life where I've had to call myself, or Kat, you've had to call me, or somebody's had to call me on that. We all have those times.
Yeah, we do.
And then looking at the resistance, noticing the cognitive dissonance, and doing it anyway.
What I could say, just to share a little personally about myself, is I feel like recently that's the kind of time I've been in. That's been my biggest struggle of. So I know exactly what that feels like of. And sometimes it's conscious, sometimes it's totally unconscious. Of like holding back the good because I'm afraid of the change, or I'll have to let go of other things, or I'll have to make a big decision, or whatever. It can be scary, and I've come up against that self-sabotaging tendency in myself recently.
Right.
Yeah.
Self-sabotage, which then pulls us out of our bodies. Because if we're, again, fully living in our embodied presence, our bodies always tell us the truth. That's the other thing, is like there is infinite wisdom here. So
there's no room for lack of truth.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you actually live in your body, and your body's telling you, fuck no, don't do that thing. Like, step away from that job, or step away from that relationship, or step away from this city. You don't need to live here.
You can't do it.
Right. And your body is telling you that thing, but you're not ready to. You're not going to live in your body. You're going to take measures to disembody yourself, either through substances. We see this really prevalent in our society, the avoidance through substances, the avoidance through eating unhealthy food, everything that we talked about earlier, eating unhealthy food, watching television, playing video games, not doing our practices, whatever that may be. Yeah. I feel like we could talk about
we can use these all day. So let's talk about some stuff, like let's get some tools and some tips and some helpful strategies for getting people, into their practice or back into their practice, or what are some things that we can really offer to people so that they can succeed?
Yeah. Similar to what Michelle was saying earlier, like when people come to meditations that I've held, and they have a hard time quieting their mind. It's really hard when you first start meditating to get your mind to just stop the chatter, stop the wandering from one thought to the next, stop rehashing the past and thinking about the future, right? So, and then people have busy schedules. So it's like, start simple. It's a good principle, is start simply. Don't create this huge goal that all of a sudden you have to try to attain. Even though you think at first you can do it, you're going to end up putting a lot of pressure on yourself, and then you're just not going to do it. But if you start with saying, okay, 5 minutes each day, I can set aside 5 minutes each day to put on some relaxing music and sit with my eyes closed and practice a simple meditation technique and go on with your day. And then after a while, hey, try 6 minutes. That's not very different than 5 minutes. Try 7 minutes, try 10 minutes, increasing gradually with whatever you're doing. If you have a new physical practice where you're like, I need to get better, a better exercise routine in my life, commit to doing 2 days at first, if it's not something you're used to, right? Then after a month, commit to doing 3 days, and so on, right? So increasing gradually, so you're not putting all this pressure on your life, when pretty much everyone's life has tons of different things that are pressuring them and needing their attention and energy. So if we try to put some huge thing on ourselves right away, it's just not going to work.
Yeah,
you're setting yourself up for failure. So it's one, taking the time, do your research, find something that you really like, go to different gyms, go to different classes, find the different things that really speak to you, that you align with. whether it's a type of meditation, a yoga practice, a qigong practice, a martial art, a fitness, practice. So take the time to find the practice that works for you. Take the time to find the teachers that are right for you, and start out with a gradual increase in what you're doing.
Great.
That's general. That's general advice I'd give for someone starting out. And then for people who have been doing their practices for a long time, still struggling to get as consistent as they would like to be, sit down, take the time to set realistic goals for your schedule, for your life. Right? Start setting realistic goals that you're going to attain, because you're going to get more benefit from setting a lower bar and then succeeding. And then you get the high from that success, and that's going to motivate you to keep going, instead of setting a super high bar and then you don't get it, and then you just get down on yourself, and then that pushes you away from the practice more, because you're getting all these feelings that's going to lower your energy.
Totally.
So start low, give yourself the easy high, raise your energy, feel like a badass, feel like, yeah, I did that practice 2 times this week. I completed my goal. I'm awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that a few more times, and the next month I'm going to do it 3 days, and I'm unstoppable. You can create these highs in your mind that eventually get you to that place that you want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. That was going to be my number one too, is start small, start manageable. I will say it is the very rare person who can give themselves a laundry list of stuff to do and actually accomplish it. My brother is one of those people. I was absolutely floored when he made up a workout routine for himself as we were training for a race. We ran a race together in August, and he made his schedule that had not only workouts, I think he did 6 out of 7 days. He gave himself 1 rest day, but he also had a couple 2-a-days. And I was floored that he did it. He set it up for himself and he successfully did it, but he also has a lifetime of playing sports and being, captains of sports teams and everything. So he knows what it means to put in the practice. Most people are not like that. I'm not like that. Most people are going to need the start with 2 minutes, start with 5 minutes, and set yourself up for success from there. I want to also add embodiment practice. We're an active group here, the 3 of us. I know we've all had a history of sports activities. Embodiment practice does not have to look like a traditional sport. It can look like gardening. It can look like walking your dog. It can look like standing outside with the trees. It can look like burying your feet in the sand. It can look like, I don't know,
Totally.
laying on the ground. It doesn't have to be a physically active thing to be an embodied practice.
Shifting your diet.
Yeah. Yes. Food.
Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite things ever is gardening. I just love to garden and just to be around plants and touch plants and, having that connection to them is amazing. Just laying in your bed and watching yourself breathe is an embodiment practice. Just any time that you're watching, that you're aware of your body, watching yourself breathe, watching your movements as you're washing dishes, feeling your feet while you're walking, just anywhere, is helping you to be more embodied inside of your being. So for sure, it doesn't have to look like what everyone else is doing. I want to say a community. We've done one of our earliest episodes was on community and how important it is for healers and spiritual practitioners and those that are on this path to develop a community. But if you are interested in a certain thing, you can watch a video on YouTube and you can do it on your own every day, and that's amazing. I know that my morning practice, it might not be so extensive. I get distracted and I, oversleep, and then I have something planned. And, but going to the gym and training with the Qigong masters and, going to primal movement class and training with people who kind of kick your butt. And then you have other people there and you're all doing it together. And so you kind of push yourself a little bit harder and you're more present. Finding that community that supports you, that's going to cheer you on and be there, and you show up a little bit more when you're with other people.
Yeah, pretty much always you're gonna are, by yourself at home.
Mm-hmm. Also, when you're partaking in a community class or community whatever, give yourself space. Make sure that you do stay in your body while you're doing it. I know that's my thing, and my personal practice is largely solo because it's easier for me to stay in my body when I'm doing that. So just keep that in mind if you're going to, if you're playing basketball or whatever, there's a high degree of like mental strategy and like moving around, but also like make sure you stay in your body while you do it. That's like Zen basketball, right? Where you're just, your intuitive awareness is so high because you're fully embodied.
For sure. And another thing that people
go ahead.
Another thing that is really actually helpful that I utilize and some clients utilize is that we can actually start to take advantage of the technology that oftentimes is the thing that keeps us away from our practice, to set reminders in our calendars on a daily basis, to put I have my Qigong classes in my calendar as a recurring thing so that people aren't booking sessions with me during that time. And I am, I'm not going to make it every single time because I'll have clients or whatever, but I am committed to being there as often as possible. There's an app that I use called the Insight Timer, which is really easy, and it sort of you can track how many minutes you're doing a meditation, or if you're doing the Reiki practice and it's like this many minutes here and this many minutes here and you're working on yourself, it will let you have different little bells that go off every 2 minutes or 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and then it's tracking how many minutes you're doing a certain thing throughout the month. And you can sort of see, oh, wow, I did this meditation practice this many minutes this month. That's amazing. I'm incredible. There's a Tabata app, which is like high intensity training, which is, so many seconds on and so many seconds off, 20 seconds on and 10 seconds of rest. Which
I'm a huge fan of that one in the winter when it's too rainy and cold, or if it's covered in ice. I'll do living room workouts of high intensity interval training.
Yeah. So I'm sure there's lots of others where you can track more extensively what it is that you're doing and working on, but these can be extremely helpful because otherwise we just get caught up in our life.
Yeah.
Okay, well.
Yeah, lots of great apps. My girlfriend Kelly, she had a hard time drinking enough water throughout the day. That's been the thing for her, that I'm always trying to help her drink enough water. She got this little watch that was connected to her phone. She got an app that helped her, that would say, like, the app would pop up on the phone. It could read her system. I don't know the technology of it, but it would say, your body's thirsty, time to drink water, whenever it was time for her to drink water. So it was like, there's so many apps that do all these different things. So it could help her, remind her when it's time to drink water. Like, so anything simple like that, you can get an app for it.
Yeah, nice. I want to include also keeping your practice fresh. That's another thing of like, it is possible, if you do the same thing every single day, maybe that works for you and maybe you can stay just as fully engaged, or maybe not. So I'm a routine person. I like my routine. And for the most part, it's usually pretty easy for me to stay grounded and present, but I'll switch it up every now and then. Like I'll run different routes, or I'll go to different places, or I have different journal prompts. But there's, kind of the similar theme of, okay, I spend time energetically and then I spend time physically. And the way that looks shifts around a little bit so that I stay just as present. I don't zone out. It's not like oh yeah, this is my time to journal, like whatever I'm writing, it's got to stay immediate.
Yeah. Again, that creativity and persistence over time, and enthusiasm.
Yeah. Have fun with your practice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Here's one that I like, is that if for me, I'll build like a little playlist on on Spotify or whatever, and it's like, oh, this is going to be my morning playlist, and I'll just use that morning playlist, and then maybe different songs on the playlist are different little practices that I'm doing, and they kind of move with the music, and then this sort of prompts me as I go, and then maybe they're coming in different orders, so then that keeps it fresh and interesting, and I get to kind of play within this container that I created. And it's like, I know how long that this playlist is going to be, and I'm just going to force myself, no matter what, to stay on this mat until this playlist is over. And maybe things will be the same or the different as they were the day before, but I'm using music as an inspiration. And so when people are first starting out, I might say, okay, go and find an album that's interesting to you, and don't really listen to it, but just one song, like just for one song, you're going to use that song for your practice time. And so that's 4 minutes maybe of a practice that you're going to do. You did the thing, you got to listen to the cool song, then the next day listen to another song on that album, and then you've got 4 minutes, and then that at the end of the album, after 10 days, do the whole album. There's an hour, you just did an hour of practice, and then go find a new album and inspire yourself with some new songs. So some people who are really interested in music and like learning something new, and then be like, oh, well, I really want to listen to the next song. Okay, great. Listen to the next song. Just do your practice at the same time.
I don't know if you've been to the gym and seen the people on the treadmills who are just like plugged in and watching TV. That's like the total opposite of that, so if you're listening to something, make sure it's not pulling you out of your body, but it's dropping you deeper into your body. So I generally advocate not podcast listening while you're listen to our podcast, not while you're doing your embodiment practice, because it's probably not helpful for you actually staying in your body.
Right. It's not necessarily maybe the best thing to be watching TV or but if that's what you need to do. Yeah. Anything else?
That's not an embodiment practice. It's
not really.
Yeah. Might be exercise. It's not embodiment. Yeah.
Yeah. Something that came to mind earlier as we were speaking is we have proactive practices and we have passive practices. Mm-hmm. So if you come home from work every day and you sit down and watch TV, that's your passive practice. You're not thinking of it as a practice, but why are you doing that? You want to decompress. You want to feel relaxed. You want to feel better. You want to have a time of turning your brain off. That's what all these, the universal theme in all of these practices is quieting the mind. Mm-hmm. So that you're in the zone, you're in that space. Where your mind
Oh my goodness. So the internet just went.
All right, we got you.
Hey there. Sorry, the internet was sideways for a moment. So just repeat what you were saying about the practice. The purpose of these practices is for the mind to become quiet.
Oh, that's where you got cut off.
Yeah, that's where I got cut off. I don't know if anybody else.
Yeah, the universal purpose of all these practices is to quiet the mind, to come that once your mind is quiet and you're fully in the present moment, to quiet the mind, to come into the present moment, and then you're free from anxiety, you're free from the chatter of the mind, you're free from stress. So we can either passively be doing practices that we're not really thinking of as practices, like coming home and just zoning out to the TV every day to quiet the mind and relax, or we can choose proactive practice that we know we're consciously choosing to do it and making the effort to better ourselves each day with that practice.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to circle back around to another why about why do these practices. We spoke a little bit about stagnancy, I guess, and about making change, and how some of that fear and resistance to doing practices are because we're not necessarily in alignment with creating change in our lives, but doing the practice is going to be the thing that will give you enough energy to make a big change. Whether it's, you know, the way that you're running your business, right? Or, you know, the work that you're doing in the world, or whatever situation is big and scary and daunting, right? And we get into the habits, right? So speaking about, you know, kind of a habit, oh, my life is this way. I live in this city. Or in this house even. I live in this place and I do this job and I have this, you know, these friends, and this is my relationship with my family, and this is my, whatever the deal is. And we get into such a rut where it would require a colossal amount of energy for us to shift out of that situation. And your practices, again, we talked about you're building the pyramid, right? Where the pyramid is the amount of energy that you can channel, not only channeling, you know, bringing forward non-physical beings or bringing through healing energy, but actual energy that you can use to create shifts in your life. The more practice you have in place, the bigger your container to have that quantum amount of energy that it will take to actually make a big change that is sustainable. It's going to stay, and it's going to ultimately like shift you. You know, if you're in the rut, you've got to like ride up over the edges to get out. It's not just steering off the track. It's actually like climbing out of the rut.
Yeah. When you grow in the practice, the rest of your life naturally shifts and changes with that.
Because there's no room for anything that's not in alignment with the practice.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, and sometimes, honestly, I talk about the amount of energy required to make a big change. Sometimes it's not even that. Sometimes it's you just start doing a practice and things fall away that don't fit anymore.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's easy. Change is fun. Practice is fun. Any other thoughts, Kat, about or tips, ideas for people cultivating?
No. Just do it. Just start something new. Have fun. Play.
Yeah.
Well, you know, let it be easy.
Great. Yeah, have fun with it for sure. Cool. Any other thoughts to add before we wrap up? Did we go over today?
Yeah.
We went way over. All right. I had a feeling we would. Yeah. Any final thoughts on embodiment?
No, I think we covered a lot. I think really enjoyed just getting to be here and talk with both of you, and you know, share all our thoughts, ideas, insights with people out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you're interested, and thank you to all of us for tuning in, if you're interested in connecting more with Andrew Marshall of Embody the Practice, you can find him at embodydthepractice.com. You can also, if you're interested in connecting with myself or with Kat, you can find us through our Facebook page, Shaman Sister Sessions. You can contact us through shamansistersessions@gmail.com. You can contact Andrew through his website or through embodydthepractice@gmail.com. And there are plenty of opportunities to work with us. Andrew gave us some great insight as to working with a teacher or working with a practitioner. I know he is a teacher here in Portland of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So if you're interested in training with him, how would they do that through your website as well to find you that way?
Yeah, and you can go on gbportland.com. That's the website for our jiu-jitsu gym.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you can private message me on Facebook as well. You can go on my website. You can email me at embodydthepractice@gmail.com. And I have a newsletter that you can sign up for. Private message me on Facebook or email me, go on my website if you're interested in signing up for that newsletter. Yeah.
Fantastic. Andrew is about to embark upon a tour of the West Coast. So if you're tuning in from LA or San Francisco or Seattle or anywhere in between, Portland also, please.
Not like San Diego? What the hell?
Sorry.
Yeah, what the hell, Andrew?
I need to talk to you about that. Wasn't able to make it down to San Diego on this one, but
that's ridiculous.
Let's talk next time.
Unacceptable.
Right.
Well, no, I have a place for you to come and teach if you want to come down and teach in this area. So
definitely do. Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Yeah. Well, so if you would like to join in one of the amazing workshops, Andrew will be working with the sound healing, not the jujitsu, on this tour.
Sound healing and yoga.
Yeah, sound healing and yoga. So you can contact him for more information about those workshops. You can also stay tuned for those of you in the Portland area. Andrew and I do some work together offering workshops here that we will be resuming in November. We both got a lot of on our plates right now, and with both of our travel plans, we're taking a little hiatus, but we'll be back at it in November. And Kat, what do you have going on right now?
I'm just about to start Light Warrior Mentorship, which is my 6-month group mentorship program, which is starting up next week. And so this is an exciting program that I run for healers and coaches and, all the spiritual warriors out there who are looking to build their tools for their own practices and also their businesses and, kind of get themselves out there in a new way. So that's starting soon. So I have a phone call in 4 minutes to talk to somebody. So
we'll hurry up and wrap up then. Yeah. And we will be speaking next week, or actually in a week and a half, speaking my first keynote speech. I'm so excited. First keynote talk at the Superwoman Summit, which is coming up here in Portland. It's a 3-day conference focused on women's empowerment, especially in the workplace, equal rights, equal pay, and empowering the feminine that lives within us all. I will be speaking about, what is my speech? Queens and Kings, the royal archetypes of the divine, feminine, and masculine. And Kat and I will actually be giving you a special little preview of that next week for our episode. We'll be speaking about the royal archetypes of the divine, feminine, and masculine, and how that has to do with our work as spiritual warriors of the light in this field.
Right on.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Andrew. It's always a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're
this
welcome
is
back.
Awesome.
Anytime.
Great to be on here. Yeah. Make sure you stay tuned. The Shaman Sisters, these women are amazing. So thank you so much for having me on.
Of course, doing the good work in the world, all of us. Yeah. So please reach out, shamansistersessions@gmail.com, and stay tuned in next week for Queens and Kings.